with the prayers first. Om Gyana Timiransya Gyananjanaya Shalakya Chakshur Chakshur Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadaki Swaha Patantinam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahaganarvanatikam Tam Sajidam Sadvetam Sabdutam Prechana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Deva Shri Vishakam Tapcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinokando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kancha Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hariye Vancha Kalpa Rupatasya Cha Kirpa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitatana Papitana Bhavandiyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna. I seek the blessings and permission of the senior Vaishnavas and the Parampara to talk about Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.13. Thank you for my opportunity. Thank you, Lord. And I will start with quick prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 13. That's when Shri Krishna picks up Sudarsana Chakra to protect the womb of Uttara. Vyasanam vikshaya tattesam anaya vishya atmanam sudarshane sanina swastarayana swayam raksham vyadhat vibhu. Vyasanam vikshaya tattesam anaya vishya atmanam sudarshanena swastarayana swanam raksham vyadhat vibhu. Vyasanam vikshaya tattesam anaya vishaya atmanam sudarshanena swastarena swanam raksham vyadhat vibhu. I will do the English translation for each word. Vyasananam, great danger. Vikshaya, having observed. Tat, that. Tesam, there. Ananaya, no other. Vishaya means Atmanam, thus inclined. Sudarsanena, by the wheel of Shri Krishna. Swa Astrena, by the weapon. Swanam, of his own devotees. Raksham, protection. Vyadhat, did it. Vibhu, the Almighty. Translation. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, having observed that a great danger was befalling his unalloyed devotees, who were fully surrendered souls, at once took up his Sudarshana disc to protect them. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Purport. The Brahmastra, the supreme weapon released by Ashwatthama, was something similar to the nuclear weapon, but with more radiation and heat. The Brahmastra is the product of a more subtle science, being the product of a finer sound, a mantra recorded in the Vedas. Another advantage of this weapon is that it is not blind like the nuclear weapon because it can be directed only to the target and nothing else. Ashwatthama released the weapon just to finish all the male members of the Pandus family. Therefore, in one sense, it was more dangerous than the atomic bombs because it could penetrate even the most protected place and would never miss the target. Knowing all this, Lord Shri Krishna at once took up his personal weapon to protect his devotees, who did not know anyone else than Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has clearly promised that his devotees are never to be vanquished, and he behaves according to the quality or degree of the devotional service rendered by his devotees. Here, the word Anaya Vishaya Atmanam is significant. The Pandavas were 100% dependent on the protection of the Lord, although they were all great warriors themselves. But the Lord neglects even the greatest warriors and also vanquishes them in no time. When the Lord saw that there was no time for the Pandavas to counteract the Brahmastra of the Ashwatthama, he took up his weapon even at the risk of breaking his own vow. Although the battle of Kurukshetra was almost finished, still, according to his vow, he should not have taken up his own weapon. But the emergency was more important than the vow. He is better known as Bhakt Vatsala, or the lover of his devotees. And thus he preferred to continue as Bhakta Vatsala than to be a worldly moralist who never breaks his solemn vow. It's beautiful. I would share some of my reflections. The beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam is that every time we read a verse, there are multiple reflections, multiple realizations, and multiple learnings. And so I will just share some of them today. So first of all, the shloka starts with that Shri Krishna observed that the Brahmastra was in flight. And so even though Shri Krishna observed, but Shri Krishna knows already, having given the free will to all the devotees, all the souls who are part and parcel of Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna knows the free will. So he knew ahead of time what would Ashwatthama do. And now Shri Krishna was observing as the Brahmastra was in flight. And so yesterday, Vamsidhari Prabhu talked about the blindness of the nuclear weapons that we have today. And this Brahmastra is not blind. It is, it is of course got more radiation and heat to destroy not only the target, but the whole cosmic manifestation, the material manifestation. So it is triggered by a Vedic mantra. And so there is the whole concept of vibration of sound, and that how the vibration of sound can create weapons of destruction, a targeted destruction. And in this case, of course, it had more heat than the atomic weapon of the today. It would not miss the target. It's very targeted. It's not blind. It is intelligent or smart, as you can call it. But also it's irreversible. And so once it goes out, then it can't be called back. And so in this particular case, even though weapon was very smart, the Brahmastra, but the person who used it wasn't very smart in this case, and we'll talk more about that. But he was targeting an innocent woman and an unborn child within that woman, which is Maharaj Parikshit. So if we just circle back and reflect what was going on, Duryodhana had already been killed, or the Ashwatthama and the Kauravas had a defeat already that had occurred because Duryodhana was down. Ashwatthama had killed the 5 innocent sons of Pandavas, and that was almost a murder, not even a war. But in this particular case, if we look at the Ashwatthama's actions, they, even relative to Kali Yuga, they are not even war crime. They are a very lowly murder or a vicious murder. So even though the weapon was smart, but the person who used it was actually blind with the hatred of Pandavas, hatred of devotees, and even though his own father, Dronacharya, was martyred in the battlefield, and as Krishna promised, all the people martyred in the battlefield had gone to Krishna Loka. Ashwatthama could not see that for some reason, because he was blinded by the hate of Pandavas. So even though the weapon was could see, weapon was smart, but the person wasn't. And so if you think about the rules in those days during the war, if you just reflect, and the reason I'm talking about the rules is it's relative to understand, it's good to understand what Ashwatthama was doing relative to those rules. So the rules was that the war would start with the conch shell, blowing of the conch shell in the morning, and it will end at sunset. And there would be only one person to one-on-one combat between two people who have weapons, and the person who has the weapon won't attack the person who doesn't have a weapon or lost his weapon. And at any particular point in time, no two warriors would attack one warrior of the opposite army. So those were very highly ethical rules of the war, which of course were first of all broken by the Kauravas when they actually killed Parikshit's father, Abhimanyu, the brave Abhimanyu, by surrounding him, by several warriors surrounding him in the end. And so that was the first known instance of breaking the rules. But then, of course, there were other rules that were broken, including war going past the sunset when Gatotkacha has to come and bring Kauravas, almost vanquished the Kaurava army at that time. So there were rules broken, but that was the first instance of the rule broken. But in this case, where Ashwatthama is right now, the Duryodhana is defeated in the war, and he's just trying to, in blind hate, trying to now make murders of innocent beings. And in this case, he was targeting the womb of Uttara, who had the male son conceived the Maharaj Parikshit. So if we look at even in today's standards, Kali Yuga, so those were the standards in the Dwapar Yuga of the war and what Ashwatthama was doing. So even by those standards, it was a very lowly, hatred-driven act. And even if you look at today's Kali Yuga standards, even in today's standards, somebody tries to kill a unborn child, that is likened to a murder, and that is subject to capital punishment. So even by Kali Yuga standards, he was actually now doing he would be deemed as criminal and subject to the laws of any country where that act would occur. So in this case, it's not like that he was doing a war, and because that's important to understand that when Lord Krishna picks up Sudarsana Chakra, it's not, Lord Krishna's vow was anyway limited to the war, and this time there was no war. This was just a very mean murder occurring, or an intended murder occurring. So that was the state of Ashwatthama, blinded by hatred, and he was still able to invoke the Vedic mantra to unleash the Brahmastra. And So and then Srila Prabhupada talks about Shri Krishna's action in this case. Yes, Shri Krishna had taken the vow not to pick up his weapon. But in this case, Lord Krishna did do that for a number of reasons. The first is Pandavas, who were unalloyed devotees, they were completely surrendered to Lord Krishna. And just like Lord Krishna is an absolute truth, similarly, his promises are also absolute truth. And so in this case, Lord Krishna, knowing that Pandavas were fully surrendered, Lord Krishna needed to protect the Pandavas. That was the first and foremost reason. And then there is a bigger context as well why Lord Krishna had to do this. But that's the first and foremost, that Lord Krishna is overcome and is bound by the love of his devotees. And that love was the driving force why Lord Krishna picked up the weapon. And then the other thing is, even from a material platform, like I described, there was no war at this time. This was just a criminal-oriented intended murder. So from a material platform, we can even understand that even though Lord Krishna's vow might have been restricted to the time of the war, this time it wasn't the act of war, it was the act of crime. And so Lord Krishna picked up that out of love for the Pandavas. At a spiritual, so that is understanding at a material platform. At a spiritual platform, we know that Lord Krishna is the absolute truth. And that means that Lord Krishna's actions are also absolute truth. And we can understand that by a simple example of Lord Krishna's pastimes, childhood pastimes, when Lord Krishna will steal the butter, and then the gopis and Mother Yashoda will ask him, did you steal the butter? And Lord Krishna will outrightly say, no, I did not steal the butter. And that was the outright lie. And so how can we understand a person who is the absolute truth is doing outright lies? How can we understand that? And so at a spiritual platform, if we understand from Lord Krishna's perspective, when as a child, Lord Krishna was lying to the gopis that he did not steal butter, it was in that lying itself increased the love for Lord Krishna for that little child in the hearts of gopis. And the ultimate purpose, the highest purpose of life is to love Lord Krishna with open heart, with infinite love. And what Lord Krishna was doing was helping the gopis fulfill that purpose by increasing the love for Lord Krishna, for the love for absolute truth. So at that platform, we understand then the absolute truth, even the lies of the absolute truth are absolute truth. So because that absolute truth is trying to help us achieve the absolute purpose, the highest purpose. So similarly, in this case, Lord Krishna may seem like that he may have broken his vow, but really, let's understand that from Lord Krishna's perspective as well. So from Lord Krishna's perspective, there was an arrangement. As we know, as Lord Krishna protected the Uttara's womb and eventually Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was the chosen soul to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there had to be somebody, and Maharaj Parikshit, because of his spiritual previous life, had to be the one who was chosen by Lord Krishna to hear the beautiful message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And at the same time, within a short period of time, the Dwapar Yuga was going to end, and Kali Yuga was about to start. So the whole message of Srimad Bhagavatam was, like Lord Krishna says, that Srimad Bhagavatam in Kali Yuga, that's Shri Krishna, that's non-different. And Krishna would live in Kali Yuga as Srimad Bhagavatam. And so there was the whole bigger context of, from Krishna's perspective, that was a bigger context of the whole message of Srimad Bhagavatam was to permeate the Kali Yuga, was to live in Kali Yuga, was to deliver the souls in Kali Yuga. And even in the last 5,000 years, many souls have returned to the Krishna Loka, where Krishna is always waiting. Even one soul is extremely important for Lord Krishna. So if you look at that from, of course, we can't never understand all of Krishna's perspective and all of Krishna's pastimes completely. But from Krishna's perspective, if you look at least this, that Maharaj Parikshit it was his will to protect the Maharaj Parikshit, eventually to have the Srimad Bhagavatam spoken and delivered for the souls of Kali Yuga. So that was the little bit bigger picture beyond, okay, I took the solemn vow, I'm not going to pick up Sudarsana Chakra and so forth. So that is a little bit of Krishna's perspective. And at any rate, at a material platform, we should not judge anyone, any of our fellow souls, what to talk of Lord Krishna's actions. In this case, one may think like, oh, Lord Krishna broke his vow, so I can also break my vow. It's not like that. Because Lord Krishna, when he breaks his vows, that's also an absolute truth. And that's also, all his actions are absolute truth. So that was a little bit of Krishna's perspective, as well as the fact that the war had, it was not the act of war, it was the act of very lowly crime on the part of Ashwatthama. And then Srila Prabhupada talked about Krishna's foremost driving force why Sudarsana Chakra was picked up. It is the Bhakta Vatsala. So if you think about, first of all, within our own souls and in the whole cosmic manifestation, the feeling of love is the highest in the path of devotion, or in the path of the whole human life. And that feeling of love comes from Lord Krishna. And on top of that is Krishna's love for us, the infinite love for every soul that Krishna has, combined with the feeling of love that has been given to us, helps us increase the love for Lord Krishna, for the absolute truth. So at any rate, in this case, love is the highest feeling. Love is the ultimate goal, up to the point of, like Lord Chaitanya used to felt unconscious in even the name of uttering the name of Lord Krishna. So having that love, having the highest purpose, and that's what, and it is said that love for God comes from love of God, and in a sense, that particular love is even greater than the Almighty Himself, because the love for Krishna actually can bound Krishna. Not that anyone wants to bound Krishna, but Krishna gets bounded by just pure the feeling of love. And that feeling of love, if you think about it, is takes the highest hierarchy, if you will. And those vows, there may be, they fall in little bit bottom of the hierarchy. So there is always a hierarchy of values as well, whether it is the spiritual life or even in our material platform. We have all the values of goodness. There are several values, but they are not based on the situation. The values change hierarchy. And so having that bigger context is also important, because when it comes the time to trade out one good value over the other, it is got to be the situation based on the bigger picture and what is right for the overall welfare, and at material platform, what is right for the overall welfare of the society, and at a spiritual platform, what is right for the overall path of bhakti, path of devotion, and how souls can be delivered. So there is always my reflection from this verse is there is always within good values, there is always a trade out, and sometimes they conflict with each other, and there is always a trade out within the bigger context that what is a higher purpose in this, not motivated by individualized greed or desires, but what is a higher purpose. So that's how we can understand that in this case, the higher purpose was Pandavas were fully surrendered. So that means when the souls are fully surrendered and they leave everything to God, and then they see God's hand in everything, and then God actually, not only those souls see God's hand in everything, but God actually has a hand in everything for those souls that leave everything to God. So that coupled with the just the love for his devotees, and that love, the feeling of love, that value is gonna always supersede the value of oh, I took this vow, for example. So and from my perspective, the reflection or the learning for me in at a material platform is also that when there are different good values that conflict, then we need to step back, think about the bigger picture, and then develop a hierarchy, and then choose the higher hierarchical value over the lower hierarchical value. Not that the lower hierarchical value is not right or not good, it is, but it is more situational, it is more context-based, it is more for the higher purpose, whether it is at a material platform or a spiritual platform. We can also see that Lord Krishna has a promise. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, and declare boldly, ask Arjuna to declare boldly that his devotee never vanquishes. And it is not the same vow as somebody, a material person would give, because that vow, it's not the same promise that a material person may give, because that promise may be laden with imperfections, but Lord Krishna's promises are perfect. So Lord Krishna has seen and demonstrated a number of times during his pastimes how he protects his devotees and don't let the devotees vanquish. We've seen in the case of, in Kali Yuga, we've seen in the case of Haridas Thakur, who was beaten up in 22 different marketplaces. And it is said those beatings were so harsh and hard that a normal human being would not be able to take more than 2 beatings and be able to live. And so 2 beatings were enough to make the person dead. That was the harshness and the severity of those beatings. But yet, as we know, Lord Chaitanya protected Haridas Thakur by taking up those beatings. And even at that time, Lord Chaitanya could have or would have picked up the Sudarsana Chakra, but he didn't, because again, Haridas Thakur was chanting and praying to forgive those people who were doing those beatings. And again, this is again another place where Lord Chaitanya's hierarchy of values is shown here, that to fulfill the devotee's prayer, in this case of Haridas Thakur, was more important than Lord Chaitanya picking up the Sudarsana Chakra and vanquishing those people who were doing that crime. But in this case, Lord Chaitanya did the best of both worlds. So not only he fulfilled Haridas Thakur's prayers, but also he protected Haridas Thakur by taking the beatings onto himself. And so that is how we understand how Lord Chaitanya even protected his devotees and did not let his devotee vanquish. And of course, we know the story of Draupadi, who when she was getting insulted in the courtyard of Duryodhana, and then Lord Krishna protected. So his promises are also perfect. His promises are also absolute truth. And that is what Lord Krishna is showing here by picking up the Sudarsana Chakra and showing that how different values are more important depending on the situation. And it is a matter of using that intelligence to make those decisions in this part of your moment. And then there is another aspect of it that Lord Krishna was observing, and he knew all of that. But even though Pandavas did pick up his weapons, their weapons, but Brahmastra was approaching at lightning speed, and Lord Krishna knew that those weapons that Pandavas had picked up aren't going to be sufficient. So there was a lot of decision making on the feet, if you will, made by Lord Krishna in this case, and that is again taking into account that there were various factors at play, and so doing that right thing was important. And of course, this is a topic of future verses, that when Ashwatthama was finally that weapon was subdued, and Lord Krishna overcame that weapon with his personal energy. But then what outcome Ashwatthama also experienced. But this is yet another case of the chapter is called The Prayers by Queen Kunti. So this is yet another example where the Lord's unlimited glories and Lord's always following through his promise and always protecting his devotees come in, and that leads the groundwork for Queen Kunti to say her prayers as well, which are not only within the context of Mahabharata, but they are perpetually applicable to all the souls in Kali Yuga. In all the situations, they are those prayers are always true. How Lord Kunti prays, and all those prayers are absolutely beautiful prayers in this chapter. So, if I were to just summarize the various topics we touched upon today in this beautiful verse, and the instant and thinking of defeat, decision making by Lord Krishna. One is that Lord Krishna observed, and he of course knew how this free will be misused. Then Lord Krishna made the instant decision to pick up the Sudarsana Chakra to protect his devotees, being bound by the love of devotees, And at any rate, this was not a war. It was not an act of war. This was an act of a very lowly intended crime, a murder of an innocent being that had nothing to do with the rules of war in the Mahabharata. And then the second reflection is that yes, the Brahmastra is very smart, very intelligent, very surgical, very targeted. Very targeted. It's irreversible. It has more heat than nuclear weapons. But the person who was using it wasn't smart at all, or didn't, or was blinded, or couldn't see, even though the weapon could see, but the user couldn't see beyond the hatred. And then, the third is that Krishna's actions were for a higher purpose, for making sure that beyond, after the Dwapar Yuga ended, there is Srimad Bhagavatam for the fallen souls like myself in Kali Yuga. And so there was a higher purpose over there to protect Maharaj Parikshit. There was a higher value of protecting of having the love for devotees, and love of devotees take precedent over a solemn vow. And then there is the ever fulfilling aspect of Lord Krishna, of his promises, which is to protect his devotees, and having that unalloyed love of his devotees take precedent over others of other values. So this is what I had for today, as far as reflections and some of the thoughts on this beautiful happening that is occurring in Lord Krishna's pastimes. So I will pause here and invite any questions, reflections, realizations, comments. All are welcome. So I'll pause here if anyone wants to say some things, some topics.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. My question, Prabhu, I mean, you said, yeah, I mean, Lord Krishna's activities are all absolute, right? So, I mean, of course, we understand the example that you gave is his stealing of butter, and I mean, from that perspective, we understand. But when it comes to in our situation, I mean, there are different levels of understanding of a situation. I mean, if what can we do? I mean, because the different people are at different levels, right, of the situation of understanding. Somebody will say, okay, Krishna stealing butter is bad, right? Somebody who has a different understanding, they will say he's attracting those, I mean, gopis, or their love for him is increasing. But the people will misunderstand, right? So in our situation also, when there are when there are activities, different people will say different degrees. So how do we not get carried away with our own understanding, and not, I mean, how can we see there is a higher purpose? That is one question, Prabhu. The other thing, when we are in the other side of it, right, when somebody else is not able to see the situation, right? So how do we handle that? Maybe if you can throw some light, that will be.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. So let me repeat the questions. The first question is, how can we see the higher purpose when we are in a situation? And second is, how can we help others who are in that situation and we are not, to help to help see that higher purpose?
Yeah.
That's
right, Prabhu. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you for asking that question. So from my perspective, there are a couple of things on the first question, which is the higher purpose. So one thing is that if our own egos and our own self, or false egos, or our own self is not in the center, that's first test we can see is if I make a decision is this decision only going to benefit me? Am I in the center, or on a spiritual path, is Krishna on the center? Krishna is in the center. So, and if Krishna is in the center, then are we? Is the decision going to be devotionally inclined to help increase the devotion, or help increase the Krishna consciousness or God consciousness? Is meaning God is in the center, or is it more driven by individualized purposes? If there was an example, we could also reflect on such example. So the other is that, so that's more at a spiritual level. At a material level, I would say that I would say it's not always easy, but there can be some guiding principles that is a large swath of society stand to benefit from this decision. How are the benefits outweighing the cost? But again, we cannot do that. It's again, like I said, it's more situational. We cannot do that by harming a smaller group of people, or compromising their values. So as long as we can keep a perspective of what's the big picture, and to make better decisions, are we asking big questions? And if we are not able to, again, it depends on whether we have the time or not. From my perspective, if there is not an instant decision like this one to be made, like Lord Krishna did, if we have little bit time, I certainly like to invite others' perspectives as well, to see a issue from various angles, just like we see a house before we buy it from all the angles, from front, left, right, and back, and we even do a walkthrough. So just invite various perspectives. I'm the first one to admit, Prabhuji, that I only have a certain perspective to an issue, but I've learned that gathering inputs from others and getting their perspective helped me better understand the bigger picture, which I hadn't thought of before, and then make an informed decision for the greater good and for a overall betterment of society. But again, it depends on, do we have time on our side, or not. And sometimes we will make decisions in a material platform that are instantaneous. We didn't have time on our side, and I have made wrong decisions in haste, and in which case, rather than regret, it's always pick up the pen and paper and say, what's the lesson? What can I learn from this? But if we have time on side, having some trusted advisors around us and getting that perspective, even getting a perspective from somebody who's not even who doesn't do that kind of work, or who are not in that space regularly, is also extremely beneficial. It's not that we are making a decision only get perspectives from people who are in those kind of activities, but also inviting perspectives from those who are not in those. I found that to be, I've seen others also found that to be extremely beneficial. So it's always a matter of self-improvement and self-realization, probably. So that's first one. The other is about how can we help others see it. Again, depends on our relationship with them. If they feel secure enough to confide in us and get our perspective, certainly I would say that setting a good example of getting others' perspectives, and also can help others invite perspectives from us, can work. Sometimes, again, depends on if others are open-minded or not. to get those perspectives. And again, if there is if the time is not on the side, then the decision is more instantaneous during the situation. And sometimes we are not always intelligent enough to make the most informed and the best decision. So I recognize that, but recognizing that yes, there are trusted advisors around us. There is a lessons learned from past decisions. There is a higher purpose for the greater societal good. And then finally, at a spiritual platform, there is a higher purpose when Krishna is in the center and not our own desires and our own individualized goals necessarily. So that's my imperfect answer, Prabhuji. I'm sure there are better answers if you get that we ask the same question of other devotees. But that's my imperfect answer, Prabhuji.
No, bro, beautiful answer. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other reflections or questions? Okay, if not, I ask, it's a blessing to talk about Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, and I take everyone's blessings. And thank you so much. Hare Krishna. I'll keep the line open still if somebody wants to have some for a couple of minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. This is Anandini Priya.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. There is one point I really like when you were mentioning about there is hierarchy, like the way hierarchy of values when we make decisions. So it's not like a cookie cutter that every time it will be the same decision. It will be based on the situation and what is the situation, what is the priority of our values, right? Based on that, we make our decision. And there was one the question coming in my mind, and I thought of the answer. I will share both. So the question was in case of Srila Haridas Thakur when he was beaten up in 24 marketplaces. So I was thinking that it is Leela of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? And everyone is taking part in the Leela. So if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted, this would not have happened also, right? So I mean, this Leela wouldn't have happened. So then I was thinking, it's like Srila Prabhupada gives the exam, like my answer, like then I was thinking about it, and then I was thinking that Srila Prabhupada in one of his lectures, he was saying that in order to teach us, Krishna teaches us through his devotees. So when a daughter-in-law comes into the house for the first time and a mother-in-law has to teach her. So mother-in-law will teach her by telling her daughter that, you should do it like this, like that, because she cannot say directly to the daughter-in-law. So at one point, we also need to learn that, how to take complete shelter of Krishna. And in such extreme situations like of Draupadi and Srila Haridas Thakur, they teach us that, how we should take shelter of Krishna and complete shelter and be fearless. So that is what my thinking was, Prabhu. Can you please elaborate, or can you please give your input?
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. That's a great perspective that actually it is meant to teach us how to take shelter. And those extreme situations, if Lord can protect his devotees in those extreme situations, then our situations are probably not like Draupadi or Srila Haridas Thakur, and then having chanting purely during those times, and not only chanting purely, but even begging for forgiveness from the Lord. So that's exactly it. Is to help to help take the shelter of Lord. These examples are to help for us, like myself, to take shelter of the Lord in difficult situations. And those are examples set up for us to learn. That's absolutely agreed with that. And thank you for bringing that perspective. And thank you for actually being a teacher in this class. With that perspective, yes, that's a very very nice, very nice. We completely agree with that. Yes.
Prabhu, just now when you were giving the answer, you said praying to forgive others. What was in relation with? You said.
Yeah, so Haridas Thakur was also praying to forgive his attackers. So not only we can take shelter of the Lord in difficult situations, but we can also pray to deliver those, and I'm not there yet, but to pray to deliver those who harm us. So that's another part of the Leela, is that they can coexist, and that's a very great Vaishnava quality, to pray for those who hurt us.
Yes, Prabhu, I need to cultivate that. Difficult, but it is good to cultivate. Very good point. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, good.
Taking shelter of ourselves and also praying for others who are harming us, right? So
yes, yeah. And you brought up a good point about fearlessness, because this fearlessness comes from with devotion to the Lord, and actually God is not fear. God is love. Forgetting God is fear.
Yeah.
So like sometimes people will say we are God fearing, or we should fear God. Actually, Krishna is full of love, and actually forgetting, and if we remember him purely, then we are fearless. Whereas the opposite is true. We forget him, then the fear comes. So God is not fear. God is love. The absence of God is fear.
And why, Prabhu, absence of God is fear?
Absence of God is fear because when we can't remember God, when God is not in the center, then we are fully exposed to the material issues, if you like. So a simple example I can say is that people who are not remembering God, and God is absent from their life, they're probably inching towards death. Every day the sun rises like it has today, they're inching towards death. And whereas a devotee is, and that death is normally has a connotation of fear in the material world. Whereas a devotee, every day the sun rises, is inching one inch towards Krishna. So complete surrender to Lord invites fearlessness. That was what my point was.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Does that answer it? That how absence of God creates fear? Or not? You can share your perspective, because If not, then we can learn from each other.
I'm still thinking, once I had that because once I was very anxious, Prabhu, about a certain thing. And I know I should not be fearful, should not be anxious, but still I cannot ignore that I'm not anxious, right? So I was, and then I went back to the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1.2.8, I think, where Krishna says that, where Sutta Goswami says that if someone utters the name of Krishna even offenselessly, even once, is free from fear. And that time, Prabhu, I just I thought that, okay, I am chanting, but still I am having fear, right? So then I sat down, and then for the first time in that situation, I tried to chant with focused attention, and I prayed to Krishna to, help me to understand how you remove the fear. And Prabhu, when I chanted with that intention, then my fear for that thing was gone. That thing is still there in my life, but I'm not fearful of it anymore. But I cannot describe how it worked. That part I don't know how it worked, but it worked.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that reflection and that so if you think about it, had we not prayed to Lord Krishna to help you overcome fear, there was nobody else to turn to who could have necessarily let your feeling of fear go away.
Yes, Prabhu, because I talked to so many people, and they tried to give me different perspectives, but it was not working.
Yeah, it was not working. Yeah,
Not
because Krishna is the greatest friend, and
yes.
if we just turn to Krishna, then that's the greatest friend. Not that other souls aren't our friend; they are our friends, but he's the greatest friend.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, that answers my question actually.
Yeah.
Because he's the greatest friend, and he's controller of everything, right? So he removes it from our heart.
Yeah.
We can do it ourselves. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. We can always talk to Lord Krishna. He hears it. Just because we can't see with our material eyes doesn't mean he is not there and he's not hearing. And so he hears it. He hears every word, and actually he sees every thought of us too. So we just turn and talk to him. Then he hears it, and that's very important. When Lord has heard us, then what decision comes out of it is Lord Krishna's, but hearing when we speak, he definitely hears. He hears us.
Yes, Prabhu.
And only he can remove the fear. Guess what? The feeling of all the feelings, whether it's love, fear, or other feelings, they come from. They all come from the infinite, the Lord Krishna. So he can remove. He can do the impossible.
Yes,
it includes removing fear or mitigating fear or reducing anxiety.
Right, Prabhu. Yes. Because that I have personally noticed that when Krishna is not in the picture, then I become anxious and so many other feelings come. But when Krishna is in the picture, then those feelings go away. Right? Those feelings, fear, anxiety, and those things are not there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Prabhu. If nobody has sharings, then want to.
Okay. Okay. So, Prabhuji, then we can close the.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our-
Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.